Well, data indicates food inflation has been steadily cooling, but a new poll shows most Canadians believe it's still worse than it was a year or two ago. 64% of those surveyed by Leger say they think inflation at the grocery store is getting worse. 25% say it's about the same, and just 6% believe it's improving. Almost 30% think food inflation is primarily caused by grocery chains trying to increase profits, which major grocers have denied. And 26% believe global economic factors are responsible, while 20% blame the federal government. And joining us live now with more on the findings is the food guru, Sylvain Charles-Bras, director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. Always great to chat with you, Sylvain. Let's talk about this report. Does it surprise you at all?
No, not at all. I mean, the reality is that even though food prices are dropping, they've been dropping since March, by the way. If you look at yesterday's CPI report, we're seeing prices in many categories drop, but people aren't necessarily feeling it. Why? Because people are showing up at the grocery store with less money. The cost of living is clearly a problem for a lot of households. They have to spend more to make payments for their debt. They're paying more to make sure they keep a roof over their heads. Everything is costing more. So that's why when people show up at the grocery store, they feel way more desperate, no matter what's going on with food prices.
When we're dealing with these kind of tough economic times, there's always, people looking to point fingers at who's responsible for this, what is driving this. And when you look at this report, you've got a lot of different finger pointing. You've got people who think it's primarily caused by grocery chains. You have other people believe it's part of economic factors, rising energy prices, inflation, maybe the carbon tax. What do you make of this, the blame game when it comes to why grocery prices are so high?
Yeah, I mean, if you are to blame anybody, I think it's a mixture of different things. You keep in mind that food inflation is a complex phenomena. Food inflation has hit every single nation around the world, not just Canada. Everyone has been impacted by food inflation in recent years across the planet. But right here in our own backyard in Canada, I mean, you can actually blame almost everyone for something, starting with grocers to the supply chain, to the economy, to the government. They all can play a part, and they all have played a part in making our food basket less or more expensive. Last week's news that Loblaw was endorsing the code of conduct is certainly good news, because certainly Loblaws can be blamed for some supply chain bullying, putting more pressure on vendors. Say if a company wants to sell jam to Loblaw, well, listing fees that Loblaw is charging to vendors has increased more and more in recent years, forcing vendors to increase prices. And at the end of the day, who's paying for that? Consumers. So the code of conduct would actually stabilize wholesale prices, which will eventually impact retail prices. So that was good news for sure. Loblaw recognized that it can actually play a role. With governments, of course, you have different taxes, you have interprovincial that are making the cost of business go up, which is why it's very difficult to attract grocers into Canada.
Lastly, Sylvain, I'm sure for many people watching, the current economic conditions is unsustainable for a lot of people. Aside the fact from high grocery food prices, you have the cost of living and housing and all these things. But for many Canadians, they're starting to, maybe rethink about where they live. And I'm wondering, what's your long-term outlook for food prices and grocery prices? And do you anticipate that there might be any relief in store for Canadians?
Well, if you look at Ontario specifically, the average Ontarian is spending as much money on food than he or she did last year. But it's the kind of money being spent, or it's the kind of food being bought. That's my biggest concern. The nutritional value you get for your money, I think, has been compromised. You're not getting the same quality food for the same amount of money, of course. And so over the long term, certainly nutritional security will be an issue for the province and for people living in Toronto for sure because of the fact that it's costing a way more to make sure you keep a roof over your head, unfortunately.
It's interesting you say that. Just the other day, I went to the grocery store. I bought nothing but nutritional items: asparagus, broccoli, cantaloupe,
Hey,
watermelon, Brussels sprouts, blueberries. Just a couple of items, and it cost about $55 just to try and eat healthy. It's tough out there for a lot of people.
And what's going on right now, to be honest, people doing that is great, but you can't do it every week, unfortunately, because of the costs of some of these produce. So people go to the store where there's more ultra processed food, high calorie rich, nutritionally poor products, unfortunately.
Sylvain Charbois, it's always great to chat. Thank you for joining us.
Take care.